When people first hear that I'm a cult torture survivor, some of the torture that I went through, the mind control, the trafficking, they often assumed that that meant that I grew up in like a compound or really isolated, but I did not. I grew up in a busy city in Toronto. My parents sent me to public schools, but they made sure that there was always one, at least one cult adult who was part of the school. They sent me to extracurricular activities, or they took me and stayed, but there was always, again, either an adult or they were there. Like skating, where they dressed me in really skimpy outfits that my abusers got off on, and swimming. They sent me to Brownies and Girl Guides and CGIT, but there was always a cult adult there who would report back on me if my parents weren't there. And I was kept somewhat isolated in terms of who I could interact with. And I was also kept isolated from popular media. Like, my parents only allowed me to watch Sesame Street, Mr. Dress Up, Polka Dot Door, even when I was like 12, 13, 14, until I disclosed the child sexual abuse. That was the first step to me remembering of a great uncle. And when I disclosed that at school by writing a story, and then that meant that the police and the Children's Aid, or like in the US, Children's Protective Services, got involved. When that happened, they started changing it, and I was allowed to watch a little bit more TV. But like, I was shut off from a lot of popular media. There were kids at school who would be like singing pop songs, and I didn't know what they were, or were talking about actors or celebrities that I had no idea what they were talking about because I was kept so isolated in that way. But I had access to books, and books were like a lifeline for me, helping me imagine and believe that there were good people in the world, or that good things could happen, or helping me feel less alone in my trauma and pain. But I could not have survived the torture without the dissociative identity. Like, I needed those splits, as well as the cult intentionally made those splits. But I grew up in Toronto. It was not in a compound. It was not isolated in the way people often assume. And my parents and other cult abusers mask so well, and they look so good in society. My parents had good paying jobs where it looked respectable, went to church every weekend, volunteered in so many different ways, and knew somewhat of the right things to say. But they don't have compassion and empathy. They lack compassion and empathy. They can mask it a little bit, and they can say some of the right things, but if you really pay attention to your gut and to body language, you might be able to tell something is off, and yet people would still not know about the cult torture, the torture that was happening every day and every night at home, and when they took me to places for the cult and for the trafficking. It can be happening to someone you know. It can be happening in your community so easily. There are so many cult torture survivors where the abusers and the family look normal, with a good facade, good masks. Please believe survivors. Please hear survivors. The ways that people could have figured it out more were looking at all the signs of child abuse and torture and cult torture that I showed. Like many of the signs and symptoms in my Signs and Symptoms of a Cult Torture Survivor that is on my website and linked in my bio.